Medicine Hat has experienced some dark economic times. Who will lead us for the next 4 years? Candidates have stepped up with their ideas. People of Medicine Hat have made their choice. This is Medicine Hat Votes 2017. And good evening, and thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to our special presentation, Medicine Hat Votes 2017. Well, the polls have just closed. We will soon find out if Ted Clugston is elected for a second term. We'll also learn which 8 candidates will make up City Council. Now, many people have been calling for change this year, so will we see that change in the form of new faces on council, or will it be the familiar names that we already know? We'll know the answer to that question soon enough. We are expecting the first results from the city shortly, and that should include the 1,600 votes that were cast in the advance polls this year, a number that is down 16% from 4 years ago. Arlia Murray will be manning the results desk for us tonight, and she'll join us in studio when the first results come in. And we also have reporters stationed across the city to bring you reaction from the candidates. Now, joining us in studio will be 2 special guests, longtime political observer Barry Finkelman and former MLA Blake Peterson. They'll help break down the results as they come in and will provide us some insight on this year's races. But first, let's remind you of the 4 candidates who are vying for the mayor's job here in Medicine Hat. The incumbent, Ted Clugston, is looking for his second term. Now, he's being challenged by former councillor John Hamill and first-time candidates Scott Rabel and Thomas Fougere. There are 19 candidates vying for 8 seats on City Council this year. As for the incumbents, Robert Dumanowski is looking for his 6th term on council. He's joined by Julie Friesen, who's seeking her 7th term. Bill Cox is looking for a 5th term, while Les Pearson is seeking his 3rd. Jim Turner, Brian Varga, and Jamie McIntosh are all looking to be re-elected for a 2nd time. Now, as for the new candidates, Phil Turnbull is looking to return to council after losing the race for mayor 4 years ago. After a 10-year hiatus, Darren Hirsch is looking for a seat. He's joined by a list of first-time candidates, and they include Hugh English, Michael Klassen, Emmanuel Moritz, Miles Mulholland, Leslie Rath, Ryan Rayner, Maureen Roberts, and Chris Samraj, who many think could win a seat on council tonight. Colette Smithers and Charles Turner round out the field. Now, we're also watching the results from Redcliffe tonight. There are 2 candidates for mayor. Incumbent Ernie Reimer is looking for a 2nd term. He's been challenged by Dwight Kilpatrick, who's been on town council for the past 28 years. And 7 candidates are vying for 6 seats on council. The incumbents are Catherine Crozier, Larry Liepert, Eric Solberg, and Jim Steinke. They're joined by 3 newcomers, Shauna Cockle, Chris Zember, and John Gaitan. Now, as always, we'd like to give you at home the chance to follow along and join the conversation. You can join the debate online by going to our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/chattv. All of our reporters will be tweeting tonight. To follow them, you can go to Twitter. You can also follow us at Chat News Today using the hashtag MHVotes17. We'll also be live streaming tonight's coverage on our website at chatnewstoday.ca, where we will also be posting results as they come in. And for the first time, we are bringing you live on location reports during tonight's coverage. Ashley Weeb is down at the Beverage Building, where Ted Clugston has invited all of the candidates to come watch the results as they come in tonight. So, Ashley, what's happening so far?
Michael, as you just said, we're at the Beverage Building here downtown. Polls would have just wrapped up a few minutes ago, and of course the party down here is just getting started. I'm joined now with incumbent Mayor Ted Clugston. Ted, talk to me a little bit about the excitement that's really happening downtown right now.
You know, I actually chose this venue on purpose because, you know, we've been talking about downtown revitalization for so long. And of course, you see that what a beautiful building this is, and the excitement. The people are starting to roll in right now. It's exciting. I have invited, I've an open invitation to all candidates, win or lose. So I think a lot of them may go to their parties wherever they are with their families, and hopefully come here maybe later. And we should have a very interesting night. It is exciting. Elections are always exciting.
Talk to me too just a little bit about the campaign that you ran.
I do the same thing I always do. I focus on, I don't usually think about the other candidates too much. I just focus on what my platform is and where I want to go, and to try to tell that story, try to get that platform out and say it over and over and over again. I think we did that. We did everything. We did traditional, we did signs, we did radio, we did newspaper ads. So we tried to hit all markets. Of course, social media is a thing, and we ran a hard campaign, and we never looked back.
A lot of excitement to look forward to. We'll be checking back in here in just a little bit. I'll throw it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Ashley, thank you very much. And as we mentioned, we're joined in studio by former MLA Blake Peterson, who was the Medicine Hat MLA from 2012 to 2015. And of course, many people will recognize longtime political observer Barry Finkelman. Gentlemen, welcome, and thanks for coming in and doing this for us.
Thanks, Michael.
Blake, we'll start with you. What stood out for you during this year's election?
Well, for me, I think it was there was lots of interest in the community about change. I think change was a fairly common buzzword. There was a lot of challenges, of course, with the fiscal position of the city, relying on non-renewable resource revenue for so long, and that being a large portion of their budget. And but what was really heartening for me is that there was a large slate of individuals who put their name forward. Sometimes when things get challenging, individuals can sometimes stand back away from the rest of the crowd. So the desire to get involved, roll your sleeves up in the city, it's still there. So that's really good, I think.
And Barry, what were some of the things that stood out for you?
Well, as you know, Michael, I've been sitting at City Council for many years in the peanut gallery, and that allows me to see a certain attitude that's been happening within the community. For the first couple of years of this administration, the number of people turning out to council meetings was relatively low. The last year, it has grown and grown and grown, and more people have been coming out to meetings. That shows up in the number of candidates that we've got running this year. We've got 19 candidates, as opposed to 15 in the last election and 12 in the election before. Now, that's not as many as 2001, when we had 35 candidates for alderman at that time. So there's a lot of public interest in what's happening and a lot of public concern right now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight and whether those numbers do suggest change.
And 4 years ago, we sat here and we talked about the needing to berm the river. We talked about economic development. And we talked about the need for change. And so you were saying over the course of the 4 years that you've been observing politics here in Medicine Hat, what have you seen change over the 4-year term from council?
Well, certainly the berms have been a very successful model. When they were first started out, everyone thought they were too big, that they were going to encroach upon their land. But you know what? It's become a major neighborhood redevelopment plan that's done very well. But again, economic development is still the major issue. And although we've changed from the EDA and Palliser Authority, we've been moving along in a way that hasn't really brought the type of economic development that the city wants. Good paying jobs in large numbers. With the downturn in the oil economy, it's shown that this is one of the major issues, and I think that is still the issue that is #1 beyond anything else.
And Blake, those are two things that you dealt with as an MLA. It was economic development for this region as well as provincial funding for the berms. What have you seen over the past 4 years that you consider a success, and what do you think the city's fallen short on in the last 4 years?
One of the things I think we have to figure out is where do we want to go from where we're at? We're an economy that has been based heavily on the non-renewable resource sector, and anybody can tell that the job market has changed dramatically over the last number of years. Traditional manual labor jobs, the factory jobs, the manufacturing jobs, they just aren't as common as they were years past. So there's a lot of competition when a company wants to come out and set up a large manufacturing facility, but those jobs are few and far between, as are those companies. It's changed to more of a technology-based economy, which can operate from anywhere in the world. And I guess the question is, if you're looking at setting up in Calgary, Edmonton, or anywhere else in Canada for that matter, North America, why wouldn't you look at Medicine Hat? And I think that's the question that we have to ask ourselves going forward is, are we presenting ourselves with a good enough work base moving into an IT economy based upon the competition that we're facing elsewhere?
We're going to get to the mayor's race in just a moment, but as we told you off the top, Leah Murray is going to join us now with some results. We have some initial results from the city as far as the mayor goes. Leah, what do you have?
Thanks, Michael. Right now we have 15 of 30 polls that are closed. A few do still remain open right now. And taking a look at the mayor's race right now, Ted Clugston is in the lead with 904 votes. Scott Rabel is in third place with 303. John Hamill sitting in second place right now with 472 votes. And Thomas Tallbike Tommy Fougere is sitting in last place right now with 43 votes.
All right, Leah, thank you very much. And so, very, very early results. Barry, can we make anything of a couple thousand votes?
Well, it's very early to tell. When the election started, there were issues. Ted has certainly turned some people off. There are a group of seniors who are still have issues over the Viner Center. The transit system, that debacle didn't help anybody any. When Scott came on the scene, it looked like there would be a strong 1-2 election back and forth. Once it got to 4 people, it watered down the opposition, and I believe that Ted is still going to draw a very strong number of votes. I don't see any question about him winning at this point, and I think that in the long run, we're going to see the standing being Clugston and with Rabel and Hamill neck to neck, and with Fougere at the end. That's the way I'm predicting at the moment.
And Blake, anything in those results that stand out?
No, I think it's evident that it's always hard to topple the incumbent. The mayor, of course, is somebody that I look upon as the salesman or the leader of the community, but in the same breath, he only has 1 vote. So the most important part for the mayor is to have a really good handle on what you represent, who you represent, and how you're going to represent that. What I didn't see from the 3 challengers were any experience with city council, and I think that's a detriment to them in trying to break through against an incumbent mayor who I think has done a fairly decent job overall.
We'll get to the mayor's race in a little more detail in just a moment. We're going to take our first break, however, and we'll come back in just a few minutes and join us on Medicine Hat Votes 2017. Welcome back to Medicine Hat Votes 2017, and we're going to head back to Leah Murray here. She's got some results for council. Leah, what do you have?
Some very interesting results so far. We still only have 15 of the 45 polls reporting, but so far, Bill Cox has 654 votes. Robert Dumanowski sitting in the lead right now with 909. Hugh English at 453. Julie Friesen at 833. She is one of the top 8 right now. Darren Hirsch sitting at 722. He is one of the former councillors. Michael Klassen sitting at 370 votes. Jamie McIntosh sitting at 582. Emmanuel Moritz sitting at 618 votes. Miles Mulholland at 318. Les Pearson again in the top 8 leaderboard at 728 votes. Leslie Rath sitting at 204. Youngest candidate Ryan Rayner sitting at 106 votes. Maureen Roberts has 524. Chris Samraj, one of the new hopefuls, also in the top 8 right now, is sitting at 625 votes. Colette Smithers sitting at 386. Phil Turnbull, a former councillor, sitting at 841 votes. And Charles Chuck Turner at 296. Jim Turner sitting at 695, also making it into the top 8. And Brian Varga currently sitting at 590 votes in total. So a very interesting turn of events so far. There's still lots more polls to come, and there's a very good chance this could change, as many of these people are right neck and neck in the number of votes that they have right now. Michael?
All right, Leah, thank you. And so some initial results, not a lot of surprises. Barry, you've got Dumanowski and Friesen leading the way.
And I assume that that would be the case. They both have provided a reasonable leadership over the years. They are steadfast members of council. They appeal to what people seem to want. They present direct, honest opinion, and thoughtful opinion. And they've shown the ability to look at issues and modify them as they go along. So I'm not surprised. And we basically, we're going to go down to the beverage building now. Scott Roblin, I believe, has Bill Cox. Scott.
Bill, as someone who has served on council beforehand, what has this whole process, this election campaign been like?
Well, it's been interesting. It's been a sort of quiet campaign, and hard to get a sense of where the public was at. I predicted that it would be a close vote, and that some of us who were previously on council, there may be some of us that aren't there after tonight. So we'll see how it all plays out.
What are your thoughts and feelings as the results start to come in here?
Well, I've been through this process a few times. You're always anxious. You kind of start out worried, and then you maybe develop a little confidence, and then you get worried again. And it's been sort of all over the map for me. But I respect the decision of the electorate, and what will be, and the next chapter is about to be written.
Thank you so much, Bill. Back to you in studio.
All right, Scott, and so Blake, Bill Cox, right around that 6th place, 600 votes. Do you see him as being at all vulnerable?
Possibly. I mean, Bill took a bit of a hiatus between the last couple of elections, and he just barely made it in, if I recall correctly, in the last election. So he was on the bubble going into this one. Whereas you said before, you know, Rob Dumanowski and Julie Friesen, they've been high-level performers in just about every election they've been in. So it would have been shocking to see them actually not place high going forward. That would have been a real indication that the electorate of Medicine Hat was very unhappy with a lot of council decisions. So as much as people talk change, there's leaning towards a fair bit of continuity here right now. And in my opinion, it's always good to have change. You know, if out of a council of 8 with a mayor, if you can switch out 2, 3, 4 every election, it's not a bad thing. But you don't want to have too big of a turnover, because then you lose that continuity of knowledge.
And Barry, let's talk about Les Pearson. He's in that kind of 4th place range now. He made a very heartful apology during the debates about transit. There was some thought that he could be vulnerable as well. But he's right into that fourth place area. Do you see him as a chance to go down tonight?
He seems to be doing well at this point. I think you're entirely correct. When he made that apology, it was taken in different ways by different people. Some people felt that it was over the top and that he was waffling back and forth. Other people felt that he was the only councilman who actually, or the councillor who actually said that they made a mistake. And so it resonated differently with different parts of the community, and that's going to be interesting to see what the vote is. I know there are a lot of people who've said, that just doesn't work for me. Others who've said, that works for me. So we're going to wait and see. It'll be interesting to see where he comes in the running. It was thought earlier today that he was vulnerable because of it. Whether he is, we'll have to wait and see.
In and around that 5th and 6th place is Emmanuel Mortz and Chris Samraj, many thinking Samraj could be elected tonight. Do you think those numbers are going to stay, or do you think is it one of these things where he doesn't have the name recognition, he's going to have to run a few times, kind of like Brian Barger did? Possibly.
I mean, it's a little bit different with Emmanuel Mortz. He's a business owner. His name's displayed on the name of the business that he owns. They've been a member of the community for a long time, so there is some name recognition there that might help bump him up personally over somebody who's coming in without recognition. Chris Samraj, a little bit different. He does have regular articles in the Medicine Hat News, and he talks about different things across the spectrum, whether it's politics or what's happening out in the world today, or even into the library. So if anybody is still watching online or reading news articles, Chris is somebody whose name does pop up, and he's somebody who I think is visible in the community, which I really like.
And so, Blake, we heard earlier that the advanced polling numbers were down about 16% from 4 years ago. So low voter turnout usually favors the incumbents. It's either an expression of resignation or satisfaction, one of the two. So do you see anything happening as far as low voter turnout goes and what that means as far as tonight's results?
I think that's the biggest challenge anybody who wants to get into public office faces is who's actually selecting the individuals to represent them, and how can you drive that participation higher. If you look at the last election, if I go by my memory, about 40% turnout. So even as an elected official, you are actually representing more unelected people than the people who voted for you. And it's a real conundrum because you want to make sure that you are getting as much information as you can from the public to make the good decisions that you need to do on council. But if you have 60% of the people not even voting, it leaves a big gap in there to try and make those decisions that incorporate everybody's opinions and concerns, and then you have to make a decision based upon the betterment of the whole community.
And Barry, we just heard 40% voter turnout last election. It was 38% in 2010. We're always hearing how low it is. Do you see anything this year that's going to change that in, either up or down?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't. The initial advanced polls were low at 16%. They were lower than past years. We definitely have a situation where the demographics of Medicine Hat have tended to favor the senior voters. Getting the young people out to vote is a real challenge. We've got a number of younger candidates who certainly would benefit by a younger vote, who don't tie themselves to name recognition. You're looking, however, at I think still more of the senior vote within the community, and they tend to vote along the lines, the names they know. And I think that because of that, Hirsch will do well. I think that Turnbull will do reasonably well. I think that that Moritz. These are names which everyone knows. So if there's going to be any turnover, they're certainly going to be in that group. The newer group, I believe, is not going to have that strength. Although Chris Samraj, as you said, has polled very well overall, and his newspaper articles have been very well written, very well. He's been a very good approach, and in addition, he's well known in the community as somebody who attends council meetings. I'm not quite sure how that story got out, but he's been at council meetings with us for the last 3 years practically, and he really knows what he's talking about. And maybe that's what's been coming through his articles.
And that leads me to my next question. We want to know if you saw anything that will cost anybody a a chance on council, Samraj didn't have an answer for off-site levies. You know, they were given a list of general questions about from the chamber, and he, along with Colette Smithers and Maureen Roberts, couldn't answer it. And does that cost you a shot with so many issues that you need to know about?
Well, about 350 people attended those debates. More watched it on television. I'm not sure how that affects people. I'm really doubtful at the moment. I really don't have a clear understanding, I think, of what is affecting the voters. They're watching council, they're trying to figure out who these people are, but certainly the chamber debates, I don't think, have been a significant part of changing people's minds.
Let's go through then, let's take a look at some of the issues, because I mean, that's a good point. What is driving people as far as their votes, Blake? Transit, how big of an issue was it?
Well, I think it's obviously an issue for people who use transit. It was one of the topics that was dealt with through the financially fit analysis that was undertaken by the city. It would have been interesting if the transit situation had rolled out a year ago. But it's always what is the last thing that council dealt with in the most recent times that stick with people. Because the memories are fairly short when you talk about political events. So I mean, transit was one of the issues. Overall, I think it's obviously the budget and the services that people have come to expect. And I think it's going to be very difficult for the new council to close that gap, because if people aren't willing to give up services, are they willing to spend more money? And if they're not willing to spend more money, are they willing to give up services? So we've seen that debate happen in transit. We didn't see so much of a debate happen with the closing of the pool and the old arena, although there was some pushback, but that went forward just about as planned. So it's interesting what grabs the attention of the public.
We'll pick up transit in just a moment, but first we're going to head to break, and stay tuned. We'll be right back on Medicine Hat Votes 2017.
Welcome back to Medicine Hat Votes 2017. What is an election night without a little bit of drama? The system down at City Hall has gone down for about the last 20 minutes, so we haven't been able to see any of the new results. It just came back up, so we do have some results for you, but right now they're the same as they were earlier. So right now we're seeing Councillor Robert Dumanowski in the lead for the council candidates, followed by Phil Turnbull, Julie Friesen, Darren Hirsch, Les Pearson, then Darren Hirsch, Jim Turner, Bill Cox, and Chris Samraj. Those 8 candidates currently make up our top 8 right now. That is likely to change as a number of the candidates are very close in the race. We also have some school board results that we'll get to in just a little bit. But for now, that's a look at our results that we have, and we'll keep you updated, and hopefully the system doesn't go down again. Michael?
All right, Leah, thank you very much. And we're going to go back down to the beverage building to Ashley Wheat. Thank you very much. And we're going to go back down to the beverage building to Ashley Wheat.
Oh, Michael, as you just said, we're live here at the Beverage Building downtown. It's where Ted Clugston has invited all of the candidates to come down, all the mayoral candidates and all the council candidates to come down and just enjoy the night, really watch the results come in. As you can see, the party is really just getting started here. There's a lot of people just starting to fill in. Of course, the polls closed about half an hour ago, and doors opened here about an hour ago. We'll throw it back to you guys in the studio. We'll be back here in just a little bit.
All right, Ashley, thank you very much. And IT from the city becoming a bit of an issue. A little bit late after the campaign, though. So let's talk a little bit about, Leah just mentioned Phil Turnbull up near the top. Does that surprise you at all?
It's not a great surprise because Phil certainly polled reasonably well when he ran for mayor a couple of years ago. He's been a forceful individual throughout the campaign. His signs are everywhere. People certainly are responding, it looks like, to his direction that we need to have fiscal responsibility. If that is the major issue, as Blake said, then definitely more and more people are going to be voting for Phil. He's a known quantity. They've seen him work before. I think it's reasonable to assume that he's going to have a seat in council without any question.
Now, Blake, we'll talk about how people make their minds up in just a moment, but one of the big ways of doing that is the debates, and Turnbull certainly seemed like he was one of the most prepared candidates of those who weren't an incumbent.
Yeah, I mean, Phil did have some past recognition from sitting on council and the past experience as well. So he does come in with an advantage over those who have never ran for council before. It was interesting, though. I mean, when Phil was elected, he was one of the lower polling numbers or vote-getting councillors. So the fact that he actually ran for mayor just after his first term was a bit surprising for me. I would have expected him to maybe stick around, do another term, and if he had aspirations for mayor, go for it in the third term. But you know, that's the thoughts that individuals always have to deal with when you go for elected office. Especially in this case, you only have one person who gets the mayor position, but you have 8 opportunities to take a councillor position. So it's interesting how the decisions are made.
Something that you really excelled at when you were in office was social media. Now, Jeremy Thompson was here 4 years ago saying that he didn't think it would be last election. He thinks it would be this election that social media would really take off and make a big difference in a campaign, reaching younger voters. And we remember Barack Obama really reaching that younger demographic, but that certainly hasn't happened this year. I mean, it's almost been non-existent when you look through Twitter, that sort of thing. And does it seem like it's made any difference at all?
Hard to say. When you're comparing different campaigns to one another, it takes money. And it doesn't matter if you're doing it social media wise or mainstream media wise. It takes money, it takes expertise, and it takes a lot of people, either paid or volunteers. And I don't know if you're going to see that on a municipal election. It just takes too many resources, which are limited at this time in the city. A little bit different when you get into the larger centers, say Calgary or Edmonton, where the population is 800,000 or more, or over 1 million. The resources are there, the technology is there, the volunteer base is certainly there. So I think it's a matter of scale and scope as to what you're trying to do. Nothing beats the old-fashioned door knocking. People really feel comfortable telling you what's on their mind when you come to their house. Sometimes it's a pleasant conversation, sometimes it's not, but at least going door to door, you are meeting the owner of the house in a very comfortable position, and if you ask them what's on their mind, generally they'll let you know.
And so, Barry, what have you seen on social media?
Well, I want to be a bit of a devil's advocate here because, you know, we saw social media becoming very strong in the last election. You've talked about Barack Obama, you've talked about Naheed Nenshi and such, really running their campaigns effectively. But in the last 4 years, I think that people are becoming more attuned to social media. And what that means is that they're becoming more comfortable with it. They certainly feel that there are certain things that they expect from it. And it may not have the same effect today as it had 4 years ago, simply because it was new. Everybody thought, let's go to the social media and find out what it has to say. This is the way of the future, and all of a sudden the future is here now, and people are saying, okay, we expect that. What else do you have to offer? I think if they hadn't provided any social media, if the candidates hadn't been on social media, that wouldn't have been effective. However, once there's not going to be a great change from one candidate to the other unless someone comes out with a new approach to it.
Blake, you've got a follow-up.
Well, it's interesting too what Barry was saying, and the other aspect of it, I think a lot of people have tuned out to certain types of media. A lot of individuals have decided what they have confirmed to be their main social or their media information stream, whether that's mainstream media, whether it's a newspaper, television, or if it's some platform on the internet. And then they've also canceled that out. If they don't want to hear that side of the equation or the story, they won't even listen to it. So if you're somebody who's trying to gain their attention, it's a really tough battle right now on social media because they may already be tuning you out either accidentally or on purpose. So it's an interesting conundrum to deal with.
Well, we are getting word that Leah Murray's got some more results from the results desk. Leah, what do you have?
That's right. Things are back up and working down at the city office there. We do have some initial results, some more initial results, and we are seeing things start to change. Right now, Dumanowski remains in the leader spot. He currently has 1,355 votes. Julie Friesen sitting in second place now with 1,203 votes. Phil Turnbull in third place, dropping down one with 1,195. Chris Samraj all the way up to fourth place right now. He has 1,081 votes. We also have Jim Turner, who is sitting in fifth with 1,042 votes. Les Pearson is sitting in the sixth spot right now with 1,044 votes. We have Bill Cox in seventh with 1,010 votes. And Emmanuel Moritz is actually in eighth place right now with 945 votes. Now that last place is extremely tight. There's a lot of votes still coming in. Many people right around that 930 mark. So it's definitely going to be a race in there. As for the public school board, we are seeing some initial results there as well. Rick Massini currently sitting in first place, followed by Deborah Forbes. It looks like former councillor Selena Simmons will actually make it onto the board. So will Catherine Wilson Fraser. But it looks like Jeremy Williamson, who is running as part of the Concerned Parents Group, it doesn't look like he's going to make it onto the board this time around. He's currently only has 314 votes and is sitting in second to last place, just in front of Aaron Myrodon. That's all we have. We also have the Catholic School Board results as well here. Currently, we're seeing a lot of the incumbents looking like they're going to be getting reelected. We have David Leahy sitting at around 286 votes. Dick Mastel sitting at 281. He's currently the chair of the Catholic School Board, or was at least until this election. Then we have Peter Grad, who is also an incumbent. Kathy Glasgow, also an incumbent, sitting in there. And then the real race is for that last spot, and right now it appears that Robert Riesling might be after that final seat for the Catholic Board. That's all the results we have for now. We will keep you posted. Back to you, Michael.
All right, Leah. And so, Barry, let's touch a little bit on the school board race. Not a lot of surprises here. what we were talking about, we expected Simmons that she would probably get elected, but what do you make of the Jeremy Williamson showing?
Well, I think that when we were looking at the school board election originally, it looked like there were only going to be 4 individuals returning. When the nominations came in, there were all 5 had decided to return. That meant that there was going to be a strong focus on the incumbents, as there are. The school board has lost a lot of its power to the provincial government over the years, and so a lot of it has to do with policy issues. And of course, the major policy is the one that they've been talking about. The parents of the concerned students, the Concerned Parents Group. Sorry, the Concerned Parents Group certainly came forward, but I think that it was overtold. The story was overtold. Selena Simmons coming into the fray certainly changes the way that people are looking at this issue. Selena had presented herself on council as a very strong, reasonable, parental individual. She has children. She was very concerned about them. That's why she went into the school board instead of city council. And I think she took some of the wind out of their sails by moving forward. If she hadn't come in, I think we might have seen someone like Jeremy coming forward. But I think that Selena has taken a fair amount of that vote.
And Blake, many people speculated that Simmons had resigned her seat on council to run for school board for the exact reason to take on the concerned parents, to make sure they didn't get on the board. Do you see anything that's surprising as far as the results go? And did we make too much of this concerned parents during the election?
I don't know. I think, media's role and responsibility is to get out into the community and report on what individuals think are important. And not every topic is going to be front of mind to the average person in the city. So media does a great job of being very diverse, in my opinion, covering stories that may or may not have interest to the general public. I don't know if it was over-reported, but I do think that Barry did hit on a good point, that it was in discussion not only in the media but amongst the board and the group of concerned parents as well for quite some time. And typically that does mean that the intensity of those discussions does diminish over time. So, Selena is obviously continuing in her strong role of being a community advocate. She does have the name recognition again, but even the other people that put their names forward for the board have a great history. Mr. Bender was a previous member as well before, so he had decided to come back and try it again. So I think the board has been well served over the years, and it just showed how much passion each one of those individuals still has to continue the work that they started doing from the first time that they ran.
And Barry, you just wanted to make a quick point.
Yeah, so quite frankly, they came back to the school board several times. The school board gave them several opportunities to bring their petition forward, and even the third time, they weren't able to bring the appropriate petition forward. So I think they lost a lot of energy with the public when that happened.
We'll leave it there for just a moment. We're going to head to break, but we'll be right back with some more results and reaction from candidates. Stay tuned. And welcome back to Medicine Hat Votes 2017. And it sounds like we have some more results coming in this time for mayor. Leah, what do you have?
That's right. Results are coming in very slowly right now. We're assuming that with so many people on the city's website looking for those results, it's really slowing the system down. But right now, we have Ted Clugston with quite a lead over the other candidates with 1,422 votes. John Hamill sitting in second place with 638 votes. Scott Rabel with 412, and Thomas Fougere has yet to crack the 100 mark, currently sitting at 62 votes and in last place. Michael?
All right, Leah, thank you very much. And, well, what do you think? Is this pretty much how it's going to stay percentage-wise for the rest of the night?
Well, it looks like the type of race that I was expecting. You know, there was a movement out there, anyone but Clugston, and those votes seem to be divided between the three other candidates, primarily two candidates. Both Scott and John Hamill presented themselves very, very well, and they're showing that type of lead. It's not going to dethrone Ted, and there was a comment about him being a king somewhere in the debates, but you know, he has done a reasonable job for the community, and in the debates, in the advertisements, in the news media, he has shown himself to be a very strong, able, honest, and direct individual.
I know when we look back from past results, when we started getting results this time of night, that's kind of the way the percentages just sort of played out for the rest of the night. They just added to the vote totals. Normally when you want to unseat an incumbent, you just run one person. So it doesn't, like Barry was saying, split the vote. And so what do you think of the job that Scott Rabel did?
Again, I think Scott comes from a different part of the community. He certainly has a background with his radio station that he had. There is the aspect of him being a very strong religious person. So there is definitely a difference between what John Hamill is trying to bring to the table versus what Scott is bringing to the table, and then what Tom is trying to bring to the table. So each one had different platforms, different strategies. What I guess at the chamber debate, which is really all about business, you don't see the full aspect of what any one of the candidates would want to bring forward, whether it had a social issue or anything beyond business. There was very few people that actually had any ideas or solutions of things that they would do differently. And I think that when you are going to be running for mayor, you have to have some kind of example of what you want to bring forward to the other councillors. You still need the support of the votes, and you need the support of the public, but you do have to show some leadership. And I saw and heard too many open-ended comments of, we need more business, we need more tax revenue, we don't want to cut services, but there was no definition of how anybody was going to do that. So I think that's a challenge for individuals who are taking a run at the top job and not having any recent council experience except for John.
Now, Barry, we're going to get to your thoughts a little bit on John Hamill here in just a moment, but first we have Brittany Matika from down at the Beverage Building standing by with Jim Turner.
All right, now Jim, tell me about your campaign.
Well, I think we ran a pretty good campaign. We basically wanted to run a positive campaign. My slogan was, "The future is bright for Medicine Hat," and I truly believe that. I think we have a lot of great economic opportunities coming, and I just look forward to those things happening over the next couple of years.
And what's your vision if you are elected for the next term?
Well, I want to continue my work on the economic development. That's really why I ran in 2013. And I was very lucky that the mayor put me on all of the economic development committees. So I have been working hard on getting the economic development in the city of Medicine Hat and actually around the surrounding area here as well, because my feeling is what's good for the county and what's good for the area is also good for Medicine Hat.
And what change are we looking to hopefully see in this next term?
I don't know. I don't know if we're looking for a lot of change. I think we still have some challenges ahead as far as our finances go. And we still have a lot of work to do there, and I think that'll be my main focus besides the economic development is coming up wage to cover that deficit that we have.
Thank you, Jim. Back to you in the studio.
All right, Brittany, thanks. And we'll get to Turner in just a moment, Barry. But first, your thoughts. You were talking about the job that John Hamill did.
Well, John presented a candidate who was looking at a better time, a time when we had money, a time when the oil and gas was very strong. And he appealed to people, I think, from that standpoint, that individuals who wanted to return to that time. We're not going to be returning to that time anytime soon, unfortunately. And as Blake said earlier, both candidates, Rabel and Hamill, weren't heavy on new ideas. And that's what was missing from the campaign. Every time someone said, we need to build on economic development, Ted jumped in and identified, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. Now, he didn't give a lot of detail, but he gave a lot of hope from that standpoint. And I think that a lot of the people who were looking at the economic development issue were saying, you know, we've misjudged this. Things are moving in a positive direction. They seem to be, let's play it out. And I think that's part of what you're seeing in this election.
We'll pick up on economic development in just a moment, but first, Leah Murray with some new results.
That's right. We continue to see numbers come in really slowly. Our reporter down at City Hall, Scott Roblin, says that the computers are behaving much slower than usual, and the website has crashed a couple of times now. But numbers from him directly from City Hall have Clugston sitting at 2,666 votes, well ahead of his competitors and about twice the number that John Hamill has, currently sitting in second place with 1,359 votes. Rabel sitting in third with 830, and Fougere currently sitting in last place with 149 votes. Michael?
All right, Leah and Blake, let's pick up on economic development here. We talked about it in 2007, we talked about it in 2010, we talked about it in 2013, and here we are again. And it seems this is something that we just won't go away as far as when we look at growth, when we look at the development of not only the downtown core, but business in general in Medicine Hat.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's a challenge for anybody who's going to get into any kind of a government or a bureaucratic role when it comes to the economy. It's a challenge, and in the old days, and it's not that long ago, you didn't have to compete very far down the road with somebody for an opportunity in the business world. Nowadays, it's global because capital is global, and individuals can take that capital and put it wherever they want to, depending on the opportunities that are being presented in each locale. So it's a different dynamics. I do appreciate what Invest Medicine Hat has been doing. They're looking at some unique opportunities and some focused opportunities, because you can't be all things to all people. You have to really figure out what your strengths are, where are your gaps, and what can you do to close those gaps to bring a value-added product or service or business to the community that would do better here than anywhere else.
And Barry, the mayor touting $200 million worth of new construction, commercial construction over the last 2 years. Some people saying the best idea for economic development was Tom Fougere's idea, which we haven't talked about yet, which is marijuana, which for some reason he wouldn't talk and say the word on TV, but you don't really agree.
Well, I do understand Tom's perspective, because certainly any new greenhouse economy is going to bring a fair amount of money into Medicine Hat. The problem is the types of jobs that occur in the greenhouse are not high-paying jobs. When we talk about economic development, yes, we need jobs at all levels, but we really need jobs at higher paying levels that will help move the economy forward. Jobs at $12, $13, $14 an hour are certainly not what economic development is all about. It's part of it, but it's not the answer. So, and greenhouse jobs are not going to move forward. There will be a number of people who will make significant returns from it, the owners, the people who run the business, but I'm afraid that if we expand into another greenhouse economy, it's not going to help us in the direction we want to go. You know, we have another major economy, the tourism economy, which is massive, and Medicine Hat really is just barely starting to understand it. Only 10% of the Alberta tourism market is felt in southeastern Alberta. There's room for it. It's an $8 billion economy in the province alone. That wasn't even talked about.
We will talk a little bit about the race for mayor in Redcliffe, but first we're going to take a break and we'll be right back with Medicine Hat Votes 2017. And welcome back to Medicine Hat Votes 2017. And Chat News is declaring that Mayor Ted Clugston will be elected to his second term at City Hall. He right now with 6,000 votes, and we're going to send it over to Leah Murray as far as the rest of the results. Leah, what do you have?
Thanks, Michael. As you said, Ted Clugston currently sitting with 6,085 votes. There are currently 33 of 45 polls reporting. John Hamill sitting in second place with 2,769 votes. Ray Ball sitting in third place with 1,674 votes. And Thomas Fougere sitting in last place with 326 votes. Michael?
All right, Leah. And again, Chat News declaring Ted Clugston, his second term as mayor of Medicine Hat. And one person having a very difficult night is Angela Cruikshank down at City Hall with computer problems. And we're going to go to Scott Roblin now to just see what's going on down at City Hall. Scott?
As the first few results came in this evening, the city's website experienced some problems with crashing, and that was rectified within a few minutes as the newest results came in. Once again, the website crashed just a few minutes ago, but it seems like it's up and running once again. We will monitor to see how this will affect things moving forward. The city did say, though, that they will be using social media with PDFs as a backup in case their website goes down for another period of time. Back to you in studio.
All right, Scott, thank you very much. And so, Blake, 60% of the vote. Again, something not really that surprising as far as Clugston getting reelected.
I suppose. I mean, if you look at it, the noise for change was out there, but it didn't really turn into anything that challenged Mayor Clugston in his mandate to run for another term. So again, defining change is always difficult. Does that mean that it's a change of direction and you'll leave the same people in place, or does that mean you want a complete new council, or does that mean you want just to shake it up a little bit and throw 1 or 2 or 3 new faces in there? Obviously, people were impressed with Mayor Clugston's leadership over the last 4 years, and the other side is that they didn't see anything in the other 3 candidates that would make them change their mind. So it's always about what is the offering out there and where does the public think their best value is.
One of the real issues this campaign was openness and accessibility, something that the mayor and council took a fair bit of flack during the campaign about. And is that something going forward into a second term that he's going to need to address?
Well, I think that's certainly going to be an issue that they're going to have to figure out. I think there was a lot of misinformation about openness. You know, the fact that I attend the council meetings and I can understand where the information is coming from. There was too much information going on at closed council that wasn't brought forward. That was the major issue. And closed council, as one of the candidates said, should have been a place where they discuss things, they have some preliminary discussions, see where the vote is, and then bring that forward. It seems that most of the decisions were made in closed council and then brought forward, and the vote was just counted at that time, and that's what they're trying to move against. Most of the other issues, all of the commissions, all of the advisory boards and such, are open to the public in most cases.
We're going to just cut in now. Mayor Clugston is about to make his victory speech. To that, we will head down to the beverage building.
No? Yes, there we go. I'm going to get this speech over with right away so that you can enjoy your night. I can enjoy my night. We'll wait for the rest of the councilors to show up, and hopefully we have a fantastic night. So I want to say welcome and good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the citizens of Medicine Hat. 4 years ago that I was first elected mayor, and I tried not to show it, but I was scared to death, frankly. What have I done? Can I do this job? What will this term bring? I'm feeling like 63,000 souls depended upon me, and I had better not screw up. This time it feels actually much better. I just told the media that. The first time you're elected, the citizens are basically, you're applying for a job interview and they're giving you a chance the first time you're elected as mayor. But re-election, for me, frankly, is redemption. I've done the job, and for the most part, I think the people have approved of what we've done and this council has accomplished. I absolutely need to thank my team. They are the reason we've had this success tonight. I had the best team, and it shows. Thank you. Phil and Paul, I don't think they're here yet. They're actually working at the Esplanade right now for a show. These two guys quietly and professionally put up all the large signs and made sure that they stayed up. They were also the masterminds and technical behind the kickoff party and the filming of the video. Trish here, where did she go? There she is. Trish came to me about 4 years ago to ask to volunteer. We didn't really even know each other that well, and now she's a keeper. Trish and Jay were the small sign people, and small signs are a big job, actually. And she also helped Trish organize this party tonight, the decorations, the balloons. Helium's going to save Medicine Hat. And so she did the party and did the signs. Jordan Lean is here somewhere. Jordan, Jordan is actually the reason I was elected 4 years ago. It was basically the two of us that ran a campaign by the seat of our pants. I drove Jordan nuts, as he tells everybody. He's a difficult candidate to manage. He was invaluable this time for his advice, and he pretends that he doesn't want to be here, and he didn't want to be involved, but he can't resist. He's a political junkie, and I think actually this time he thought I was the best candidate. Chris Elman's here. Chris was my campaign manager. He worked with Jordan quite a bit. He was invaluable. He kept everyone organized. He was actually very, very focused and fixed on the outcome of this election. He was even up before the crack of noon most days. He was sending text messages at 6 a.m. And he also accompanied me most nights to all the events that he got to attend during the election. And I actually wore him out. He said to me, I can't.
And there you have it. That's Mayor Clugston from the Beverage Building, and we will check in with Ashley Wiebe in just a moment. Barry, let's get back to the openness and the accountability that we were talking about. I know one of the big issues was Julie Tracy and her tax assessment. That, you were saying, was made in closed council. There was an about face, and something we haven't seen here, a gag order on council, and they wouldn't talk about it. So.
Right. And I happen to know Julie. I know her quite well, and I was talking to her just last week. And Julie explained to me the situation and what had happened, and I'm still confounded, absolutely confounded with what happened. I think that information is not getting back and forth, and that she had some indication that there was going to be some support, and then it was completely taken away from her. So something has to be resolved in that, and that was a bitter mistake that council made.
Blake, every time that it was brought up to the mayor during the campaign about this particular issue or issues like this, Julie Tracy or closed council, he would just say all the records, you know, all the votes are on record, and just deflected it, wouldn't talk about it, wouldn't address it, other than to say if you want to know where the information is, you need to look harder. Is he going to have to change his ways in council going forward the next 4 years?
I think that the public are asking for a better understanding of how the process works, and there are limitations as to what you can and cannot discuss in open council, but the majority of your business is something that probably can be done in public. The reasons why they did or did not choose to make the decision that transpired not only has an impact on the elected officials, but the bureaucrats. So there's an accountability issue, not only on the public face, but on the bureaucratic face. And I do think that if you do see some new faces on council, which I think we will, it's a good opportunity for them to dig in right away, and this would be a great example for them to ask some pretty serious questions about what happened, why did it happen, why was there initially a response that we'll look at this and deal with it, and then all of a sudden it was pulled back and no, we're going to go with status quo. So I think there's a little bit of concern as to what information is coming out, and then maybe some changes in what was said and then restated.
All right, we'll leave it there. We need to take a break. Stay tuned. Coming up, a lot more on Medicine Hat Votes 2017, including the latest numbers on the race for City Council. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Medicine Hat Votes 2017. Now, first off, we were hoping to have some results from Red Cliff for you, but because they're counting the votes by hand, we don't even have preliminary results at that time, but we will keep you posted as soon as we get any of that information in. Meanwhile, taking a look at what's happening right now in Medicine Hat, we have all 40 polls closed and reporting. Councillor Robert Dumanowski sitting in first place as the first councillor with 7,234 votes. Chris Samraj sitting in second place with 6,614 votes. Turnbull is sitting in third place with 6,357 votes. Julie Friesen in fourth place with 6,132 votes. Just getting some numbers here for you. Friesen, I believe we have Hirsch in fifth place. And he currently has, where is he there? There we go, 5,999 votes. Then I believe we have Jim Turner next, and he is sitting at 5,484 votes. And then the last couple spots are kind of unclear just at the moment. A lot of movement right there between a couple of the quieter candidates, Brian Varga, Jamie McIntosh, along with a couple of the more outspoken candidates like Les Pearson and Bill Cox. Back to you, Michael.
All right, thank you, Leah. And so, really no surprises. Barry Dumanowski, once again, where we thought he'd be, right at the top of the list.
Without question. It looks like we are moving towards a business-oriented council, a council that is focused on economic development, a council that is focused on the business industry within Medicine Hat, and people seem to want to return to that time when business was the strength of Medicine Hat.
And Blake, Chris Samraj, second place. That we thought at the top of the show that he would have a chance, but this is a fantastic showing.
Yeah, I think it is fantastic, and when you look at who's currently in the top 8 right now, he is truly the only new candidate that's looking to take a seat on council. You look at Phil Turnbull, you look at Darren Hirsch, they've been there before, so they are actually coming back in a capacity that is great for them, and obviously it's a business aspect that they're bringing forward, but they have the experience as well. So they're a couple of returnees, but it's fascinating and fantastic to see that Chris has caught the attention of the public. He's resonated with the public and the voters, and I couldn't be happier.
And looks like Hirsch is going to be coming back for his second term as well.
It looks that way, and you know that says a lot about where Medicine Hat wants to be. They want to be in a strong financial situation. The fiscal responsibility seems to be the #1 issue. Turnbull and Hirsch both campaigned on that platform, and that's where they want to be. And I'm not surprised about Chris Samraj either. I think that really, you know, if people were looking for someone new, someone bright, someone intuitive, Chris has done a very good job of putting himself in that position.
One of the interesting things that we were wondering about how Jim Turner would do, Chris Samraj, but those were the 2 leaflets that showed up in everybody's mailbox over the weekend. I thought that was a sign of some pretty serious campaigning you don't normally see.
Exactly, and again, it's that old-fashioned getting your name right to the door of every potential voter out there. Because again, even though this is a short campaign window and you know, the amount of money that's spent in these campaigns is not as large as provincial and federal. It still takes time, and it takes money, and it takes volunteers, and it takes effort, and it just takes the knowledge of the people who are going to vote, that you actually care enough to come to see them, or at least get your message out into their face so they can make a decision on what they think you stand for.
And Barry, you've got some thoughts.
Well, and Chris's campaign was a very interesting campaign compared to the others, because Chris presented himself not as a savior and not to change the world. He simply said, look, this is who I am. I believe I can bring some new ideas to the table, and I have really been doing my homework. So if you'd like someone who has that background, give me a chance. And I think that's the message that came across. He certainly at no time beat up on the old council. He simply said, I think that I can help move them forward.
One of the things we haven't really talked about is the issues as far as the campaign goes is spending. $23 million shortfall in the budget, yet every time the mayor was pressed on it, he just would simply refer to the Municipal Government Act saying, well, we don't go into debt. We don't go into debt, therefore there doesn't seem to be a problem. However, I don't know too many cities our size that can go in, as far as the reserves, to $40 million. There is a spending problem here. Are they going to have to address that seriously? What needs to be done in the next 4 years?
Well, it's a really, we are probably one of the most complex cities because we do have this unique billion-dollar energy corporation, which draws a lot of attention. Ted was correct in the fact that we have been using, we've got a lot of infrastructure issues that need to be addressed, and most of them are funded. Most of those items are funded. When you look at the operating budget itself, we really are well balanced, except for that $20 million, which is why they went into the reserves. But that was always there for a rainy day. So his message was on target, but it may not have been the message that people wanted to hear.
And Blake, I think one of the things that failed to resonate during the campaign was there was all sorts of issues from the campaign for mayor, whether it was Hamel, whether it was Fougere, whether it was Rabel, talking about cutting spending, cutting spending, cutting spending, but really no specifics. Anywhere you turned, whether it was any of the debates, whether it was the debate here, they just didn't have any specifics, ideas of where to cut and actually where to grow spending. Is that fair?
It is, and I think when you have a gap between what you're trying to relay to your potential voter, it leaves them guessing as to what you're trying to send them as a message. The whole idea of controlling the spending is whether you make service cuts, because it's not about every sector of what the city provides as services is going to see a cut, maybe not at all. Some might take more of a shave than others, but it's the whole idea of how do you close that gap, because right now we have that $23 million and it is subsidized through reserves, which again most cities don't have that. So we really need to figure out what are we willing to pay for, how much are we willing to pay for that service, and can we do that without upsetting the taxpayer base who feels that they're already at the higher levels of tax expenses as it is, especially when you start adding in the provincial and federal tax base as well.
We were speaking about Chris Samraj a little earlier. He joins our Brittany Matika down live at the Beverage Building.
Chris, it's your first time running for City Council. Tell me about the experience.
It's been a lot of fun. I think the most interesting thing for me is just meeting lots of people. It's funny how many kids are really interested in the signs and the whole process. Some kids were drawing pictures of me today. It's it's been great.
Now, have you enjoyed yourself while you've been campaigning?
Yeah, it is. I think I'm a pretty social person, and just listening to people, everybody's got a different perspective of the city. And then door knocking, you get to see all these different parts of the city that maybe you haven't seen before. So it's been a great experience.
Was it exactly what you were expecting?
I think so. I mean, it was busy and challenging for sure. I didn't realize maybe until now what a team sport politics is. You know, you really count on your volunteers. My wife Safira has been really great. You really need that team of people to help you along.
All right, thank you to Brittany Matika. Now, right now we've got Bill Cox and Les Pearson on the outside looking in. Cox is in 9th place right now, and Pearson is in 10th. Does that surprise you at all?
It doesn't surprise me. I think that people have been concerned about Les's back and forth issues and such. Bill has been a bit of a challenge for people because he says what he believes. He knows city government, he knows policy, he knows the legal issues. It doesn't always resonate with people well because he's very darned honest. Was he wrong? In my estimation, not at all. He kept to his direction, he believed what he said, and he did his research behind him. Les, on the other hand, unfortunately gave the impression at times that he would go back and forth and he wasn't prepared. And that's what happened in the transit situation. He gave the wrong message, I believe.
Before we get to your take on it, we're going to head down to Industry Pub now, where Scott Roblin is with John Hamel.
John, first off, just your thoughts about being named runner-up in this mayor's race this evening.
Well, I think it was a good showing. I'm disappointed I wasn't the winner, but it's the way it goes.
Overall, what has this election campaign been like for you? Obviously, you're no stranger to campaigning, but what has this one meant to you?
Well, we worked hard, and I think it was a good campaign. Everything was clean. You know, there was no low shots thrown or anything like that. No, I think it was a very good campaign. I had no problems with it at all.
Anything you would have done differently this time around?
Not really, no. I got out as much as I could, talked to as many people as you possibly can. I just think that it's always difficult to beat the incumbent, and you know, that's the way it turned out. No, it's quite good.
Thank you so much, John. Back to you in studio.
Can I say a few words?
All right, so nice concession speech. Not certainly what it was last time he ran for mayor, when he told the residents when he lost that you'll get what you deserve.
Yeah, so I mean, John's never at a loss for words, and I think if you were going to ask somebody a question, you better be prepared for the answer. John certainly fits into that caliber of individuals, but when you look at it, you know, I think obviously nobody runs to lose, and everybody understands that there are only so many limited spots that are available. Especially in the mayor position, you have 4 individuals running. You're going to have 3 individuals who are going to come second, third, and fourth. So it's just the nature of the beast. I think it's a little harder when you're actually running for council, because you have 8 chances to get the brass ring, so to speak. And you know, finishing 9th, I think that's one of the ones that probably hurts the most.
Yeah. Before we get on to what's going on with City Council, we're going to take another break here, so please stay tuned. We'll have a lot more for you on Medicine Hat Votes 2017 coming up after the break.
Welcome back to Medicine Hat Votes 2017. We have declared incumbent Mayor Ted Clugston as mayor-elect, and we're going to update you on the numbers now. We have 43 of 45 polls reporting Clugston has 9,155 votes. Hamill came in second place with 4,063, Rabel with 2,481, and Fougere in last place with 486 votes. Meanwhile, we have results for the public school board and Catholic school board as well. We'll start with the public school board here. So far, we have Rick Messini in the lead, followed by Deborah Forbes, Catherine Wilson-Fraser. Selena Simmons appears to have secured a seat on the board as well. But we do have a bit of a race for the last spot. Right now, that's between Carolyn Freeman, an incumbent, and incumbent Terry Riley. Freeman currently sitting at 4,228 votes, and Riley sitting at 4,127 votes. We also have some initial results coming in from Cypress County. Catholic board first before we head to Cypress County. So for the Catholic board, right now we have David Leahy in the first spot, Robert Riesling in the second, Peter Grad sitting in third place, Dick Mastel, the chair of the board, or former chair, sitting in fourth place, followed by Kathy Glasgow. Now for Cypress County, the unofficial results for Cypress County, an election held in Ward 1. We have Michelle McKenzie, who won over Shirley Boyd, and incumbent Arthur Squire. In Ward 4, Ron Kerpewhite won over incumbent Gary Lentz. In Ward 7, Richard Oyster, the incumbent, beat the challenger Gary Proctor, and Shane Hawk beat incumbent Lee Ray Paul in Ward 8. So a bit of an upset in a couple of the wards there. That's all I have for updates right now. Back to you, Michael.
All right, Leah, thank you very much. And let's talk about Cypress County Council. Not so much of a surprise from Kerpewhite. We had talked about that a little bit earlier. He was very, very active when it came to campaigning. And he's been planning this run for 8 years and really bringing a new dynamic approach to county politics that I don't think has been there. And I think you're going to see a little bit moving forward with some of these episodes.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, you're seeing some fresh blood move into the county. It's healthy, but it's really hard taking out some of these long-term county people that have been there for years and years and term after term, because they do have a lot of inside knowledge. They do have the experience to get things done. They have the connections with different levels of government. But at some point in time, obviously community members and voters have to take a look at what, that's nice, as always, that's great what you did for me yesterday, but what are you going to do for me today? And I think some of these new individuals on the county are capitalizing on that.
An upset in Ward 8, Redcliffe, Lee Ray Paul, 30 years on council. What do you make of that?
Well, that's a hard one. He came out with a statement saying that he had received his wife's approval to move ahead and to be elected one more time. And I'm afraid that tends to be the death knell. When people say, look, I'm going to do it one more time just because I want to finish what I was doing, many people will turn to people, especially in the county, and say, you know what, you've done your job, thank you, let's move forward with a new individual. Certainly, all the way through, we've got a number of new council people who are very strong, and it was pretty well, when we talked earlier, we talked about the various races, and we pretty well bet that there was going to be some turnover. Pretty well what we expected, and this is going to bode well for the county. There has been some issue in the last about economic development, about growth, and I believe that some of the electors felt that it was time to move forward, that not that the people who were there hadn't done a decent job, but they needed a fresh vision, a fresh approach to what was going on, and I think that's what we're seeing.
Blake, one of the things that we were talking about throughout the night is county politics is a lot different than city politics. The two main issues are usually roads, gravel roads, suppression of dust, and water. And so we're talking that this council needs to move forward and start looking to the future instead of looking to the past and the present. And big part of that is things like cell phone coverage and internet coverage right across the county.
Exactly, and I think the county is going to probably face these questions if they don't face it this term, I think they'll be making a big mistake. But you can't just continue doing what you've always done, because you'll always get what you've always got. And the whole idea of county politics is, as you said, maintaining the roads, making sure there's power. But the population base is under pressure year after year. People continue to exit the rural areas, move a little closer to the urban centers, if not right into the urban centers. And your best hope in those cases is to make sure you kind of maintain some connection to the agricultural sector. And in relation to their tax revenue, they're facing a lot of the same issues that the city of Medicine Hat is a lot of their taxation revenue comes from linear assessment, which is a non-renewable tax revenue stream. And at some point in time, there's going to be a shift, and they need to get out ahead of that and figure out how are they going to replace that, again, if they want to maintain the same level of service.
Yeah. The county reeve, Darcy Geigel, will have his work cut out for him, really, in listening to these new voices and making sure some of these new issues are heard, and then the county move forward into the future, as we said. Let's take a break. When we return, we'll have more results on Medicine Hat Votes 2017. And welcome back to Medicine Hat Votes 2017. And I am in studio with Blake Peterson, former MLA for Medicine Hat and longtime political observer Barry Finkelman. And Blake, we still have, well, Brian Varga and Jamie McIntosh still hanging on to the 7th and 8th position. Is that a surprise at all?
I don't know. I think it's interesting. Again, incumbents are always hard to tell. You know, it's the voters are making a decision on how they felt you did in the last term. So it's interesting to see them there. Really interesting to see where Jamie is, because in the last election or two, he was pulling in a ton of votes, and Brian was always closer to the bottom until he finally bumped in. So it's always interesting on how the public thinks.
McIntosh, last election, Barry was the highest vote getter for the new candidates. He's now in 8th place. He's 120 votes ahead of Bill Cox, who's outside looking in right now. McIntosh was fairly quiet. We didn't hear a lot of him in his first term.
And I think that was the issue that most people saw. Both McIntosh and Varga tended to keep a pretty low profile in open council. Now, we don't know what happened in closed council. We, of course, most people didn't see them operate at the various commission and committee levels, and they were both involved in many different committees. And such. They had a number of different appointments. But in general, people didn't see them operate. And when you don't see your councilman operate, that's when you tend to discount what they're achieving. The issue is that both Pearson and Cox seem to have raised the ire, raised the anger of people, and they've been pushed down. And you know, these 4 people who are all incumbents are suffering from that. It'll be interesting to see what the final numbers are, whether they stay in these positions or whether there's a shift in the last count.
And again, Cox, one of the people that voted against moving transit back to the old system, wanting to keep the new system. Pearson, again, apologizing for transit. Those 2 are the ones that are on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and even Jamie McIntosh voted to not revert back to the old system, and he's still in the top 8. Again, I think it goes back to what was the most recent event at City Hall, and this was the one that caught everybody's attention. So whether or not people were paying attention, during the year, if they tuned in person on the TV or went down to City Hall, majority of people don't follow it, but it's these high-level, explosive public events that make people become aware of what's going on, what's happened, why did this happen, and how did this happen. Yeah. So again, I think that it's interesting that it didn't seem to affect the mayor at all. We're seeing some fallout in the councillor positions.
And Barry, you wanted to jump in?
Well, I think that Varga also countered a lot of his quietness by coming across as a good guy. Every time that Brian talked, he talked about his involvement and his role in the community and what he's done with, whether it's the hockey or the sports events or just generally meeting with people in general. So Brian is seen in the community as a regular good guy who's there to do the best he possibly can. And I think that's helped him.
Did he lose the hockey vote?
I think we'll have to wait and see on that one.
That's a good question.
Let's talk a little bit about the arena. I mean, we heard about Healed Pool. We heard Save the Pool. We heard from Save the Arena. But these are some of the things when you're looking to save money. It's not so much the repairs, which are wildly expensive, but it's the operating costs and the staff that it takes to man these going forward. That really got lost in the race as far as the ongoing cost of city staff to keep these old relics running.
Yeah, every piece of infrastructure has a lifespan, and at some point in time, it's either you do a complete refurbishment or you do a knockdown and replace. So the reality is, at some point in time, every piece of brick and mortar has to face its life expectancy. And you saw that with the pool, you saw that with the arena. The whole thing here too about cutting expenses or reducing expenses, it's about managing expenses versus what you're bringing in for revenue. And I think that, again, there was a lot of doublespeak throughout the election about we don't want to cut services, but we're not going to raise taxes. And for me, that is just an absolute huge empty bubble of space that somebody has to figure out how you do one without the other, because the expectation for services is very high in Medicine Hat. We've got a great community. We've got so many things that go go in a beneficial way for the city that many other cities don't have. but it has to come at a cost. And if you're not willing to pay for it through taxes, how else are you going to do it?
And another thing that we need to be paying for is the mayor talked about this unprecedented amount of building. We've got the Family Leisure Center, we've got the Senior Center, and then we've got the Canalta Center in this term. But what he didn't mention again was those are things that will need to be paid for as far as operating costs going forward. That becomes the big outlay in taxation dollars. It's not so much the $75 million upfront cost, it's how much are we going to lose over the course of the next 4 years.
And there were three issues that I thought that were missed out completely during the election. One was the pool itself. Riverside people were very quiet, and with the closure of Riverside School, I thought that there would be a greater hue and cry during the election. The second thing was the arena. The arena didn't even turn up on the radar during that period. And the third thing was the Canalta Center, which was supposed to be it was supposed to be pre-funded, it was supposed to be very, they were sure what the expenditures were going to be, and it never came up. And in the middle of the election, they let the GM go, which meant that there were problems with that place. So we didn't see those things come forward during the election, and I thought they would.
Well, let's talk a little bit about taxes and utility rates, what they call the Medicine Hat advantage. I know that was spoken to by a number of people, pretty much everybody. We want to keep the Medicine Hat advantage. Is that kind of a myth? And the reason why I asked that question is we have some of the lowest utility rates. We have the second lowest property tax rate in all of Canada, but we don't have the growth that goes along with that. Medicine Hat has been growing by about 5% over the course of the last 11 years. That's the Canadian average. The Alberta average is 11%, and the mayor always uses similar sized cities like Red Deer and Grand Prairie. Now, over the course of the last 11 years, Grand Prairie has averaged almost 3 times the growth that Medicine Hat has. So is the Medicine Hat advantage a myth as far as growing the economy, growing the tax base, and growing the city as a whole?
Well, I don't think the Medicine Hat advantage is a myth. I think that it's still there. I think there's still money in the oil and gas industry. Right now, it's just in abeyance, and we don't know yet whether it's going to return. The helium is a very strong potential for the return of that Medicine Hat advantage. But we're not doing a great job of selling Medicine Hat. You know, that's one of the big issues. We keep talking about marketing Medicine Hat very well. We do it through tourism. Invest Medicine Hat is doing some of it. But on the radar, when you talk to people across the province, they still don't know where Medicine Hat is. They don't know what we have to offer. And that is the issue that really needs to be brought forward in the next 4 years. We have to sell Medicine Hat, not as John Hamill suggested that at any cost, but we certainly have to sell Medicine Hat. We have to sell people on the idea of Medicine Hat, and that is what we need to do to bring economic development forward.
Blake, one of the things that Bill Cox really took a lot of flack for was saying he didn't want to give incentives for big companies to come to Medicine Hat during the debates. Now, there was a big backlash on social media. Almost a throwaway line in his reasoning was there's laws against that. He didn't really explain it, and he's on the outside looking in right now, but he was right. You simply can't give away land the way 3 or 4 of the candidates were suggesting. It's literally against the law. And again, graduated tax rates for new businesses, that is very sticky as well. So we're talking about economic development, and a whole lot of people are going, well, no, we just want to give money away for new brick and mortar factories to come in. Bill Cox says not so quickly. People get mad at him. So is that up to him to explain his position a little bit better?
It's an interesting discussion because it is a very complicated piece of legislation. The MGA is, I think it's the second largest piece of legislation in the province. And it does have the rules and regulations in there on how, as a municipality, you're allowed to deal with certain situations in attracting business growth. And you don't want to get into a race to the bottom, because that's the other thing that you run into is if you try and match what somebody else is doing, if it's obviously fair and above board, all you're really doing is putting more pressure on the next person to bring in something lower or something better in regards to breaks or fees or things like that. So it's more important to really deal with the quality of life down here. I think, getting back to what Barry was saying, I think that there is a Medicine Hat advantage. The problem is, as a owner-operator of non-renewable resources, the city's been running at a loss. If they were actually making a profit on the production of it, our utility bills would definitely be higher. So there's the risk and reward of being an owner of entities like this. Right now, we're in a pretty tough place. It's been a blessing and a curse at the same time. In the good times, I think Medicine Hat saw a lot of business go past them down Highway 3 to set up in Taber and Lethbridge because we didn't need it. Now, when these older resources are starting to come to the end of their life or being challenged by changes in technology and the way the world operates, now we're seeing challenges on what are you going to do to replace that revenue, and it's significant, and that's the biggest problem.
All right, we got a few more things to get to before we wrap up, but first we need to head to commercial break, so please stay tuned. We'll have more on Medicine Hat Votes 2017.
Welcome back to Medicine Hat Votes 2017. We have 44 polls reporting right now, starting with the mayors. Ted Clugston sitting at about 56% of the vote, 9,155 votes. John Hamill following up with around 25% of the vote. Scott Rabel sitting in third with 15%, and Thomas Fougere with 3%. As we take a look at the candidates for the the candidates for councillor, right now Robert Dumanowski is in the lead. New to council is Chris Samraj. Turnbull is a former councillor, has been off for a term there and has now been re-elected. He's in third place. Incumbent Julie Friesen sitting in fourth. Darren Hirsch sitting in fifth. He's also a former councillor who has now returned to council. Jim Turner sitting in sixth. Varga sitting in seventh. Jamie McIntosh sitting in 7th, and that final place, Brian Vargas sitting in 7th, and Jamie McIntosh making up 8th. As for the Catholic School Board, we have David Leahy, who comes in 1st place. He is a former Catholic School Board superintendent and first-time candidate, followed by incumbent Robert Reisling, incumbent Peter Grad, incumbent Dick Nastel, and Kathy Glasgow. As for the Public School Board, we have Rick Messini in 1st place, followed closely by Deborah Forbes, Catherine Wilson-Fraser, brand new candidate, and former councillor Selena Simmons. And in that last place, we still have a bit of a race between Carolyn Freeman and Terry Riley. As for Cypress County, we did have a couple of upsets tonight. Ward 1, Michelle McKenzie won over Shirley Roy and incumbent Arthur Squire. In Ward 4, Robin Kerpewhite won over the incumbent Gary Lentz. In Ward 7, the incumbent Richard Oster beat the challenger Gary Proctor. And in Ward 8, Shane Hawk beat incumbent Leroy Paul. So some upsets tonight and some interesting results for sure. Michael?
All right, Leah, thank you very much. And we just have a few minutes left. Barry, we'll start with you. We haven't got any results from Redcliffe for the race for mayor, but your thoughts on Ernie Reimer versus Dwight Kilpatrick?
Well, I think that Ernie Reimer really has it in the bag. Dwight has a 28-year experience on council, but I don't think that's strong enough to move Ernie out. Ernie certainly has proven himself as a strong mayor and a very well-respected individual. I think he's going to take it handily.
Newcomers for council, Blake, J.D. Gaiton and Chris Zember. Do you think they have a chance?
Again, it's hard to say. I don't know what the issues are in Redcliffe. The interesting thing,
infrastructure. It's always infrastructure.
Infrastructure, and doing it by themselves, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting mostly is that a councillor of 28 years seemed to be going along fairly well and felt now was the time to challenge the mayor. So I'm not sure what the messaging there is. Regardless, if Dwight is knocked out, they lose a individual from council with a ton of experience.
As far as your final thoughts, Barry, on the election as a whole?
Well, it's been quite a battle. You know, we haven't, we've seen some change. We've seen some continuity happening. Chris Samaraj is a very pleasant indicator that there is some change wanted. However, it's a business-oriented council. Turnbull, Hirsch, Turner, they come with a strong business background, and that's their goal.
Blake, final word?
Yeah, I'm excited that Chris is on there. He brings the youth. He brings the ethnic diversity that shows how Medicine Hat is changing over the years. Interesting that we're going to probably only have one woman elected to council out of 4 candidates. It's the equitable amount. Out of 19, there were 4 women. There's a lot of work to be done yet to get more women interested in running for politics, and unfortunately, Julie's going to be the only one there from the looks of it right now, holding her ground.
Well, you both did a great job tonight. As far as the prediction goes, you both knocked it out of the park as far as the school board as well as council goes. And thank you so much for coming in and offering your expertise and your assessment. Really appreciate you coming in and talking to us about your observations of what's going on. And thank you so much for doing that. And thank you so much for watching. And please remember, we have a live special presentation of Chat News coming up tonight at 11 p.m. We'll have a full recap for you. That is it for Medicine Hat Votes 2017 from the Jim Pattison Broadcast Center here in Redcliffe. Thank you very much for watching, and good night.